Word, bitch. Phantom's like a motherfucker. What's up now? Alright.
Am I reviewing a film based on a throwaway line in a Kevin Smith movie? Yes, because even though Phantoms was a critical and commercial bomb, this line is how I discovered Phantoms, and the fact that Affleck was indeed the bomb in it. This is an indisputable fact, so you can start writing your angry email to me and take your finger off the unsubscribe button, Chris. But as usual, I'm getting well ahead of myself here, so let's start at the very beginning. Phantoms is a 1998 American science fiction horror film directed by Joe Chappelle with a screenplay by Dean Koontz. The movie is an adaptation of Koontz's own 1983 book of the same name. An adaptation of the book had been in the works in the late 80s and early 90s, but had to be shelved due to New World Pictures filing for bankruptcy. The film is largely a faithful adaptation of the novel, except for the fact that the hat tips towards Lovecraft that litter the novel are removed in the film. In the book, it is highly suggested that the ancient enemy is in fact, this guy. Oh god, I am not attempting to say this. Also known as the Crawling Chaos. Whereas in the film, the ancient enemy believes itself to be Satan or a god as a result of the knowledge it has ingested from the various peoples it has absorbed over the years, and Peter O'Toole's character describes it as the ultimate chaos. The film was shot on location in Georgetown, Colorado, and as I said previously, this film was a critical and commercial disaster, only managing to gross a paltry $5.6 million at the box office, falling a long way behind Affleck's own Oscar-winning film Good Will Hunting that had been out for a month at this point. Critical reception wasn't much kinder, with the film currently holding a massive 13% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, with Felix Vasquez Jr. saying in a review, "The more the story and film unfold, the stupider Phantoms gets." As for me, I wasn't joking when I said I was introduced to this film via that throwaway line in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Being both a massive Viewer's Universe fan and a fan of schlock horror in general, I'd already seen Affleck in Smith's films Chasing Amy and Mallrats, but somehow Phantoms had passed me by, so I saw Jay and Silent Bob at the cinema and rushed out to HMV the very next day to acquire myself a copy of Phantoms on DVD. Or more probably months later, I was browsing the bargain bin at HMV and noticed Phantoms, remembered the line and bought it in a pile of 5 DVDs for $5, took it back home and stuck it on at one of our drunken movie nights, and pretty much ever since it has been a living, breathing meme amongst me and my friends. What I've just taken way too many words to explain is, even though this film has horrendous reviews from pretty much everyone and has been largely forgotten to the mists of time, I have always loved it. I'll get to why in a minute, but first, the problems. Admittedly, the plot is stupid, but that's a holdover from the novel, whose plot is also kind of dumb, but probably not as dumb as the movie, and this is for one simple reason. They try to explain away the unexplainable via reasonable sounding science. This never works. There's my tip for any screenwriter out there watching this review. If your film involves something as unrealistic as a Lovecraftian god, never attempt to ground that in reality. It just comes off as being immensely silly. It would have been far better to have just left the ancient enemy here as a Lovecraftian, unexplained, supernatural god, as it is in the book, rather than trying to ground it in reality as some Earth-based amoebic life form that is crude oil-like in its chemical construction. On top of this, the plot is very 90s sci-fi horror trope laden. There's nothing particularly new or exciting here. It also suffers from a similar problem that Event Horizon suffered from, namely that the beginning portion of the film is a tense, dark, atmospheric horror, but by the end it has gone fully off the rails schlock action horror, with slime coming out of drain pipes and nods to The Thing aplenty. It makes it feel like two films uncomfortably edited together, sandwiching a weird exposition-heavy middle act that tries and fails to explain the connection between the two. As for the editing, there are some really interesting choices made here, and by interesting, I of course mean bad. That makes watching some scenes really jarring and mildly baffling, as I honestly don't know what they were trying to achieve with them. Also, in the copy I own, the sound mix is awful. The dialogue is really soft and low, and the music and any other noises are really loud and powerful, which meant I had to re-watch this clutching the remote volume buttons under my thumb. But all that said, for me, Phantoms is still a guilty pleasure schlock horror B-movie for the following reasons. The first of which is the statement that set all this in motion. Is Ben Affleck the bomb in Phantoms?
You know, I really just wanted you to say yes.
Don't worry, Ben. Of course, I'm going to say yes. It's kind of difficult to believe now, but there was a time when Ben Affleck wasn't seen as a blockbuster leading man. I'd seen his 2 appearances in Smith's films Mallrats and Chasing Amy, plus the aforementioned Good Will Hunting, which are all more indie film or co-star performances, along with his more bombastic performance in the 5-star pure inject it into my eyeball schlock that is Armageddon, where he's of course playing second fiddle to Bruce Willis amongst a whole heap of other people. But Phantoms is the first film where he kind of carries, or is expected to carry, a big budget film on his back. He is helped in the task by the fact that the cast here are all solid. Rose McGowan, Peter O'Toole, Liev Schreiber and Joanna Going are all top quality actors who have had hugely successful acting careers in film and TV. Liev Schreiber's performance is camp and kinda creepy as all hell, and this is before he has his face eaten by a giant ass CGI butterfly and comes back as a head with tentacles. Peter O'Toole and Affleck though are the scene stealers, being fully committed to the absolutely ridiculous lines they've been asked to spout. Like this back and forth here.
Enough! Enough! It's not a god! It's not a devil! It's just a fucking animal and any living thing can be killed!
This thing is what wiped out the dinosaurs, which were pretty tough fucking customers!
What do you want me to tell you? All I'm saying is, I know it's got a weakness!
Added to this is the plot. Yes, I know my biggest and longest gripe about this film was the plot, but it's only if you are a normal person. If you are like me, an absolute sucker for schlock B movies, then there is a lot to like here. The first half is genuinely dark, tense and atmospheric, being able to successfully build tension to the point you genuinely feel like the cast, checking sinks, toilets and behind every door, is tense and scary, very successfully selling the we have no idea what's going on, there's a bunch of dead people and the town's abandoned vibe, which is just a naturally tense and scary situation to be in. It also shows remarkable restraint by not going for cheap jump scares, which it could have done a whole bunch of times, which is another free tip for screenwriters everywhere from me. Jump scares are the cheapest trick you have, so use them wisely and sparsely for maximum effect. The second half, although it does kill any momentum and tension the first half built, is pure, unadulterated, off-the-rails, batshit insane, nonsensical schlock, and as a fan of B-movies and just schlock in general, I'm always here for that. There's also loads of glorious gore. Schreiber gets his face eaten by a butterfly for God's sake, so that was Phantoms, where Affleck is 100% the bomb, like a very poor man's The Thing. The classic John Carpenter remake, that is, where a group of people isolated and alone try to battle a mysterious shape-shifting creature, but just not as good, which, let's be honest, few films are. Still a guilty pleasure of mine, and one I recommend you watch if it's on a streaming service, or if it's on TV one evening. Do people even watch TV? I have no idea. Let me know in the comments, and like the video and subscribe whilst you are doing it, because next week I'll be back with The Borrower.